So I woke up yesterday morning thinking that it was going to be a normal, nonchalant summer Friday. Then, Patrick Laine, we get the news that he re-signs with Columbus on a 4-year deal, and I'm like, okay, cool. That's the news for the day. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my day. Then social media got basically turned upside down when Vince McMahon announced that he was retiring effective immediately. And you and I are both wrestling fans, Liam. So that was shocking as all hell. And then just when we thought that news had died down and it was going to be a peaceful 9 p.m. to midnight, the NHL just goes, nope, we got a trade to announce. And holy fuck, did Twitter get turned on its ass again for a completely different reason. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pucks and Brews. I am your host, Michael Sparacino, and I am joined by our good friend, Liam Gotimer. Once again, Woj couldn't make it because we just couldn't get the schedules to work out. But holy crap, Liam, was yesterday just absolutely insane.
You're right. And it started with Vince McMahon, right? Announcing his retirement at 77 years old. I'm not going to say happy retirement. I guess I'll just say see ya and farewell and good luck with all the legal trouble that he has forthcoming his way. And then, of course, we got the Matthew Tkachuk trade bombshell. And, Mike, if Tkachuk getting traded to the Panthers was not enough of a shock, then we got the return. And, I kind of texted you, maybe is Mackenzie Weegar going the other way? Weegar wasn't the main part of that deal. He's probably the least important part of that deal. Calgary, Brad Treliving, that is a huge win, but we'll get into that a little bit more as the show goes on. But it was definitely a stunner. One of the biggest blockbuster trades I've seen in the NHL in the last decade, quite a while. It's been a very long time since we've seen a trade of that magnitude.
Yeah, so let's dive right into the trade, actually. To Brad Treliving, cheers, because you pulled off a hell of a haul for a 24-year-old player.
No drink, but I'll.
Yeah, I got my coffee as usual because I needed a second cup today after holy crap. So yeah, I remember I was literally just sitting down. I was about to go on like a YouTube binge, and then you texted me, Tkachuk just got traded to Florida, and I'm like, what? So yeah, then the shitstorm ensued.
Yeah, Bill Zito, huge.
Yeah, and I literally goes, all right, they probably got like a first return and a prospect. So I'm checking Twitter for like 3-4 minutes. Like, I wonder what the return is. Then all of a sudden I see Jonathan Huberdeau's name and I'm going, wait, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
What are the Panthers doing? Then I see that Mackenzie Weegar is also part of the deal. Holy crap. Then I see a prospect, a third-round pick from 3 years ago, is also involved in the deal. And I'm like, that's got to be it, right? Nope. 2025 first-round pick, conditional first-round pick, top 10 protected. So, holy shit. Like, Brad Treliving, like, if this isn't a masterclass of a return, I don't know what is. The only trade that I could possibly think of that came anywhere near this magnitude was PK Subban for Shea Weber.
And that doesn't even come close.
No, not in the slightest. So we have, and also Florida ended up sending, I think, a conditional 4th-round pick.
They did. That's right.
No. Calgary
sent to Florida.
Yeah. So a total moving piece trade of 6. And
well, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, Shades, very seldom do you see, not only in the NHL, but in the NBA, in the MLB, any of the 4 major sports, really, a player who was in the MVP conversation the year previous get traded for a player that I guess the team who has that MVP caliber player sees as more valuable. And that was a shock. Huberdeau's coming off of a 115-point season. Yep. Mackenzie Weegar, there are not a lot of right shot defensemen who are more valuable in today's NHL than Mackenzie Weegar. And let me also say, yeah, it's lottery protected, but the Panthers draft pick in 2025 could be decent. We've seen teams take quite a tumble, after having, despite having promising young rosters. So there's a lot to unpack here, Shades, for sure.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be, as soon as I saw Huberdeau's name, like I said, a 1-for-1, then just no, the NHL decides to steal the highlight of the day at
Well, I don't think
11.
it would have been fair as a 1-for-1, quite frankly, because I think what really got lost in a lot of the immediate reaction was that Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau, as great talents as they are, they're both on expiring contracts. So even both of those players for Tkachuk, I don't really see how that's entirely fair for Calgary. So the fact that they got a prospect back, albeit a former, what did you say, third round pick and a future first rounder. I think, it makes a little bit more sense to me once we see that the two main pieces of the deal on the ice for Florida are in Huberdeau and Weegar are on expiring deals. So that makes more sense, makes it look a little bit better from Bill Zito's perspective, I guess, but still he might have gotten fleeced here by Brad Treliving.
I am going to circle back to that in like 30 seconds. The forward prospect involved in the trade going to Calgary, is Cole Schwindt. And he was the 81st overall pick in 2019. And now that you bring that up, Jonathan Huberdeau is coming up. Jesus Christ. I can't click anything. And my phone, I swear to God, I'm trying to click something and the screen just keeps going up, down, up, down. It's like, make up your mind.
At that point, you just gotta shut it off. Just let it breathe,
Well, what I could have done is take a picture last night. That would have been the smart thing to do. But
what are you looking for exactly? The points
Jonathan Huberdeau's Mackenzie Weegar's point totals. Jesus, that took way too long. Anyway, so he has been on the Florida Panthers since the 2016-17 season, in which he only played 3 games. But in his 5 full NHL seasons, his point totals are as follows: 8 in 60 games, 15 in 64 games, 18 in 45 games, last year being 36 points in 54 games, and then this past season, 44 points in 80 games. And his age, he is 20. Why can't I see this right? He is 28. So not exactly an ascending player, but you're probably getting Mackenzie Weegar in his prime right now. And if you can get a consistent, let's say 30 to 40 point defenseman, right shot no less, which we all know how extremely valuable that is in today's NHL, on top of Jonathan Huberdeau, who is probably going to put up 85 to 90 points next season, and a future first round pick and a current prospect, circling back now to your point, that is one hell of a haul. There is a ton of value there. And the thing that I think a lot, or probably not a lot, but some people are going to miss, they could possibly trade both of those guys at the deadline, depending on what direction they're going to go heading into next offseason. Huberdeau alone is going to get you a massive haul.
Huberdeau alone gets you at the deadline, I would say 2 first-round picks and a top prospect. Like, for example, if the Rangers were to call Calgary at the trade deadline, hypothetical situation, Calgary is not in the playoff hunt and Jonathan Huberdeau is available, I think it would cost Kakko. I think it would cost 2 future first-round picks, and I think it would cost a defensive prospect. And you know what? I don't think that that's that much to pay for a player for Jonathan Huberdeau. So, and you could probably get a first-round pick from Mackenzie Weegar too. So on top of the first-round pick they already acquired, Brad Treliving, if he manipulates his assets in the right way, he could walk out with 4 first-round picks, multiple top prospects, just by giving up 1 player in Matthew Tkachuk. And that's what I think is kind of getting lost in the conversation with the NHL community. Is Matthew Tkachuk the most coveted winger in all of hockey? Yes, he is. But 1 player cannot bring to your team what multiple future assets has the potential to do. Because there's a very good chance that one of those first round picks hits better than Matthew Tkachuk did for Calgary back in 2016. So it's just a great trade. And I'm very interested to see what Calgary does from here, because I know a lot of articles are coming out and saying, oh, well, this indicates that Brad Treliving is ready for the Flames to compete and there is going to be no rebuild. I'd hold your horses on that, because I don't think Calgary is going to be as good or, as close to the team as they were last year going into next season. And that's where we can see, Huberdeau, Weegar, and a couple of other maybe rental types get traded for multiple picks. And then you have a full-on rebuild on your hands. So I think Brad Treliving set up the Calgary Flames for whatever direction they are going to head in next season. And post Johnny Gaudreau and post Matthew Tkachuk, that's all you can ask for as Flames fans.
Yeah, and speaking of Johnny Gaudreau, this news just completely overshadowed him leaving.
Yeah.
Which, not gonna lie, that's impressive. Because that was the full-on talk of the hockey world for a good 3 or 4 days. And then this just blows that news out of the water.
Well, Calgary was ready to erupt. You had news reporters saying, "Hey, have a good night, everybody." Except, he said, "What did he say?" He said, "Have a good night, everybody. Except if I go to Columbus and I accept, a deal to do reporting there for less money." And Brad Treliving really had a huge mess to clean up, and it's really incredible. And I think you bring up a great point, Shades, that he cleaned up the entire mess in one trade at 11 p.m. or 8 o'clock Pacific time on a random Friday night. So that's a hell of a move. And that's a good general manager right there. One that was receiving a lot of flack for potentially letting his 2 superstar wingers go for virtually nothing.
Yeah.
Now that narrative has changed completely.
Yeah. I mean, look, you basically replaced one player out of the 2 alone with that trade on top of getting other assets.
Let me ask you a question, Shades. I'm just curious.
Hit
Who
me.
would you rather have on your team as a first line winger, Johnny Gaudreau or Jonathan Huberdeau? Because I think it's an interesting question. They both put up similar amount of points. They both were in the Hart Trophy conversation. Both lost out to Austin Matthews. So, if I'm a Flames fan, I think my team might be a little bit better off with Huberdeau on that left wing as opposed to Gaudreau. And the Tkachuk loss, you can say what you want, but we'll talk about that one.
What are the ages? How old is Johnny Gaudreau at the moment?
I would say Gaudreau is 27, but that's just...
Okay, I can confirm that Jonathan Huberdeau is 29.
Gaudreau is 28.
28?
Yeah.
See, okay, very interesting question, because here's the thing. I look at it like this. Huberdeau was playing with Barkov, who is arguably a top 10 center in the NHL, arguably. Gaudreau was playing with Sean Monahan, who, in my personal opinion, is a disappointing first-line center.
Was he playing with Monahan?
Or was he playing with Lindholm?
I thought he might have been playing with Lindholm. Maybe he started with Monahan in the last couple of years, but Monahan's dipped. He's had a severe regression. So I think they put him with Lindholm alongside Tkachuk. But again, your point does stand because they did play together for a little while.
So with that being said, in this scenario, I honestly think I would go Johnny Gaudreau because he put up the same amount of points playing with a center that wasn't at the quality of Barkov.
That's fair. That's totally fair. But I don't think the drop-off is that much. And I think that Jonathan Huberdeau, remember, from the player's perspective, he's in a contract year too. We saw it with Johnny Gaudreau, right? He put up 115 points right before he was going to become a UFA. I think despite the lack of a true number 1 center between him, I think that Jonathan Huberdeau is going to have a really good year. Maybe not 115 points, but I think anywhere from 90 to 100 points is something that's easily feasible. And then you don't really see a drop off in value from Gaudreau to Huberdeau. So,
yeah, and I also, just to check out Gaudreau's stats, because I know this was an MVP-like type of season for Jonathan Huberdeau. which is a main reason why I picked them to win the cup before the playoffs. We all know how that turned out. Not very good.
Hey, I picked them to make the cup final. I was right there with you.
Yeah, so they both had 115 points, both in a contract year. Well, Gaudreau was in a contract year. Huberdeau he was a year away from being a contract year, but still, he's put up 99 points before, 84 points before, 78. This is Huberdeau, by the way, and 49 No, this is Gaudreau. I'm sorry. And 49 points in the shortened season last year, 58 in basically the first COVID shortened season. So there is this brings up an interesting point. Then again, Calgary wasn't exactly in the best shape the previous 2 years. Then again, Jesus Christ, that just made this question a whole lot harder, Liam.
Put it together for me. What do you got?
Okay, so Gaudreau, I'm going to use solely the last 5 seasons. 84 points in 80 games, 99 points, so close, in a full 82 game season in 2018-19. COVID shortened season, 58 and 70. Second COVID season, 49 and 56. And then 115 this past season, 40 goals. Now, good thing I screenshotted that. Jonathan Huberdeau put up, you're going to search? Jonathan Huberdeau put up 115 points as well this season, but he had 30 goals. Last season, 61 points in 55 games, outscored Gaudreau by a pretty decent margin. 78 points, in 69 games, the first COVID shortened season. Year before, 92 points in 82 games, and he had 69 nice the year before in that 5-year span. So this begs an interesting question.
At that point, Shades, my question has kind of developed for you. Who do you think is in the better situation this year to put up more points? Johnny Gaudreau with Columbus, with no true number one center in the middle, or she got line A on the left, which is not too shabby, or Huberdeau in Calgary alongside Lindholm? I think that Huberdeau is going to outscore him by quite a bit.
I honestly might have to agree with you on that one, because Columbus, they're several players away from competing, and I don't think that's up for discussion in the slightest. But Calgary, if you look at it, they replaced one of their stars, and then they got Mackenzie Weegar, who is probably going to add some spark offensively on the back end. I might have to go Huberdeau on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go Huberdeau as well. And, what the one key thing that stood out to me when you were reading off those statistics, and, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right here. Jonathan Huberdeau is more of the playmaker. He's more of a guy who's going to facilitate the puck. Johnny Gaudreau is the guy who's going to put the puck in the back of the net. And Johnny Gaudreau is playing on a first line alongside Patrick Laine, who also likes to put the puck in the back of the net. And guess what? There's no number one center right in the middle, unless you want to say Cole Sillinger is going to jump up there in a rookie between two superstars. That could happen, and on the other hand, you have Jonathan Huberdeau, who's more of a playmaker. He's going to have to drive the offense on that first line. Here's my prediction. I think Huberdeau is going to have a monster year in Calgary. And I think Brad Treliving is going to make a tough decision at the deadline to move him. And I think he's going to get a shit ton of assets. I think he's going to move Weegar too. And I think Calgary's really going to enter in on a full-on rebuild here. And I think for the writers who are kind of saying that they're ready to compete for a Stanley Cup, hold your horses a little bit. While I think they're going to get better, I don't think that you can make any case that the Calgary Flames are better right now than they were last year when they got swept by the Oilers in round 2.
They won game 1, I think.
They won game 1, so they lost in 5.
Okay, here's an interesting stat. So Johnny Gaudreau is a career point per game player with 609 points in 602 games. Jonathan Huberdeau in 671 career games, this is solely regular season, 613 points, not a point per game player. And this is a guy who's been putting up points better over the course of the last 5 seasons, reaching a point per game status in 4 straight seasons, something in which Gaudreau has not done.
Interesting.
Yeah, this is very interesting.
And that's why I think, from a lot of people around the league, when you talk about the most underrated player in hockey, the name that always comes up is Jonathan Huberdeau. So that's why I don't sleep on this guy. Do not sleep on this guy. He's only making You know how much Jonathan Huberdeau's making right now? I think it's 5.3 million, maybe 6.3 million, somewhere in between $5 and $6 million a season. Do you know how valuable that cap hit is going to be to a contending team in the playoffs?
5.9.
5.9 for a 115 point producer. That is wild. That is allocating your assets beautifully if you're Brad Treliving. It really is. I can't begin to give him enough credit. I really can't.
Okay, I'm actually going to call bullshit on your underrated point, because literally everyone says that. If everyone says it, it's not under the radar. He's not underrated. Everyone knows how good he is.
And I definitely understand that perspective as well. I think some players just get hidden in Florida, right? It's just not a very shiny destination. And, and you have other players there like Alexander Barkov, who took a ton of the media attention ever since he was drafted, big bruising centerman with a shit ton of skill, Jonathan.
And a very solid two-way center at that.
And a very solid two-way center at that, and multiple prospects coming up the pipeline. So yeah, definitely got lost in the shuffle, but people began to notice, and now general managers are beginning to notice about how good Huberdeau truly is.
So let's flip this over to Florida's perspective now.
Right.
So they get probably the best 24-year-old player in the league right now in Matthew Tkachuk.
Yes, they do.
Now, we said a couple of minutes back that, yes, they did give up an absolute shit ton from a value perspective. And there is a chance that this trade majorly backfires for the Panthers. Because say that this was an anomaly of a year, hypothetically, for Tkachuk. His career averages were nowhere near this heading into this season, as I type in Tkachuk on Cap Friendly.
Yeah, he definitely struggled in the playoffs, took a lot of flack from Flames fans.
Then again, so did most of the Flames. Okay, so this was the first season that Matthew Tkachuk hit a point per game. And the closest he got was, since we're staying in 5-year spans, the season before COVID, 77 points in 80 games. Then he had a little bit of a drop off, but not by much, the following year in the first COVID shortened season. And then 43 points in 56 games the second COVID shortened season. So with that alone, like I said, this trade does have the potential to backfire for Florida in a pretty massive way. Because let's say Tkachuk does settle into that, I was going to say 75 to 80, but let's go 75 to 80, 85-ish range. If he does fall into that as his career moves on, this is a loss for the Panthers, in my opinion.
I wouldn't say it's a loss if that's what he averages. I think it comes down to one thing, whether this trade is a win or a loss, a Stanley Cup. Because I think that the Florida Panthers are ready to win a Stanley Cup. And Shades, I'll ask you this question, and I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me. Do you think before the Tkachuk trade, as previously constructed, the Florida Panthers roster, do you think they could have beaten Tampa Bay? Seriously, in a 7-game series. Do you think they could have gotten outside of that Atlantic Division and gotten themselves to an Eastern Conference final before that trade? With that roster, same roster. Because it's 2 consecutive years now. They've got bounced by the Bolts.
Now we're talking about the playoff roster the Panthers had.
Yes. The team that lost.
Here's my reaction to that. If they were able to put the puck in the net on their power play, I would argue yes, because I look at the other side of the East, and let's be honest, if the Rangers power play was not clicking at the rate it was, they were not making the conference final.
We would have been bounced in 5 by Pittsburgh.
Probably. And also, and I look at it this way, if you compare the two rosters of the Rangers and the Panthers, I don't even think this is an argument. I thought the Panthers had a significantly deeper lineup on paper.
Deeper forward group, yes. But I think there's an issue in goaltending. There's an issue on defense. But offensively, yeah, I think that there's only one team who could have matched up with the Panthers, and that's the Avs, who went on and won the Cup. So I'll give you that.
Yeah. So to answer your question, like definitively,
they didn't even come close either year, shits. You know, I mean, they didn't even give Tampa a run for their money. It was pretty much pure domination, especially last year. And you know what? I think Bill Zito looked at that and said, look, this ain't going to change. Tampa Bay, no matter how many changes they make in the offseason, no matter how many salary cap hurdles they run into, they are going to dominate the Atlantic Division and the playoffs for years to come here. And there needed to be a significant lineup change. And he brought in a game changer. I mean, is this power play better? Is the Florida Panthers power play better without Mackenzie Weegar, without Jonathan Huberdeau, but you add in Matthew Tkachuk? I think it is. I think it is.
You can make an argument.
You know, go with size and skill, you know. Yeah, I think Matthew Tkachuk brings everything they need. And, you know, I think it was also clearly evident, you know, during that entire playoff run the last 2 years that, yes, Alexander Barkov is the captain of the Florida Panthers. There was a lack of leadership. When you go down 2-0 in a series after losing the first 2 games at home, you need somebody on your team to say, hey, let's step up here and let's figure this out, because if we don't, we're going to be knocked in 4 games. And there was nobody who did that last year for Florida. You know who would do that? You know who would go out there and kick some ass and send a message to his own team when they are not performing up to expectations? Matthew Tkachuk.
This is true.
And that's what I thought Bill Zito was thinking about when he made this deal. And it's a ton of assets to give up. And he probably got fleeced in this trade. But they would not, in my opinion, have beaten Tampa Bay with the roster constructed around Jonathan Huberdeau and, to a lesser extent, Mackenzie Weegar, if they had not made the trade. But we'll see. We'll see. They could easily go out next year and not make the playoffs because the Atlantic Division got a lot better. So I could eat my words, you know, less than a year from now. So
here's a counterpoint to play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
If, let's say, you look at the Washington Capitals.
Fair. Yep.
Now, keep that in mind for a sec. This is the first time since I started watching hockey in the 2011-12 season, that the Panthers have actually made the second round. Look at all the times that Washington got bounced in the second round. 2012, 2015, 2016, 2017. Granted, they won the Cup in 2018 after years of trying, after years of people and reporters saying, is Ovechkin the right guy for this team? Now, granted, Ovechkin got drafted in 2004, so it took them 14 years, but he was the guy, and that team was able to get it done. This is the first time the Panthers have made the second round in, I don't know the exact number of years, but it's been at least 10 years. How do we know that this team was just suffering from a lack of playoff experience? Or how do we not know that?
It could have been that way. It could have been a lack of playoff experience.
Like I said, I'm doing this solely to play devil's advocate, bringing this point up.
Right, and that's fair. And you know, I look at the example that you brought to the table in the Washington Capitals. 2012, when they lost in the second round, they lost to the Rangers, was it? Yeah, and we made it to the Eastern Conference Final, Game 7 against the Devils. So they lost to a team that
Game 6.
One win away, Game 6, still 2 wins away from making it to a Stanley Cup final. You know, you go to 2015, of course, the 3-1 collapse to the Rangers, who made it again within one game of the Stanley Cup final. 2016, they lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins, who went on to go win, the first of their 2 straight Stanley Cups. So the Capitals ran into teams that won or were going to win. And it's fair. The Florida Panthers ran into the Tampa Bay Lightning, who won the Stanley Cup in back-to-back years. But I just think, and you know what? The Capitals were dealing with a franchise player in Alexander Ovechkin. It's a lot easier to give up on Jonathan Huberdeau than it is to give up on a core led by Alexander Ovechkin. The Capitals were never trading Ovi, no matter how many times they got bounced in the second round. But for the Panthers, you have a player who's slightly less talented, not really as important to the franchise as Ovechkin was, and you had an opportunity to bring in somebody who can bring a different aspect to your group. I think your devil's advocate point is very fair, and I think there is certainly a case for Bill Zito keeping this group together and relying on inexperience as to why they got knocked out. But you know what? For me, sitting in this chair, I got to credit other general managers noticing when what they are putting out on the ice is just simply not good enough. And you need to make a big change. And sometimes you need to give up a shit ton to make a big, significant change to your lineup. And that's what Bill Zito did here. But I understand your counterpoint. I really do. Because if they had kept the roster together, they very well could have had a monster season and gone on next year and gotten themselves out of the Atlantic Division. And then suddenly they're in the third round and anything can happen. But, we don't live in that.
Actually, probably the most perfect example of a general manager saying we need a change here, Joe Sakic trading Duchesne, because that changed the entire outlook on that team, both from an organizational standpoint on paper and on ice product.
Right. And I think it is a good comparison to bring up, right? Because I think when Joe Sakic was making that trade with the Nashville with the Columbus Blue Jackets trading away Matt Duchesne, he didn't really know what direction his franchise was going to go in. Would you have said that Colorado easily could have gone into another rebuild and gotten a lot younger, or they could have built on the pieces that they already have? And Brad Treliving is at that same crossroads right now. And can you imagine if Joe Sakic had decided to keep Matt Duchesne, keep all his big-time assets? Excuse me, he didn't trade him to Columbus. He traded him to Ottawa and then got the 4th overall pick back, which became Cale Makar. So, things can change quickly in the NHL. And I think that the fact that Brad Treliving gave himself 2 options to go towards, entering this offseason is extremely key, because if he goes and trades away Weegar and trades away Huberdeau at the trade deadline, we could have a similar turnaround as the Colorado Avalanche did when they traded away Matt Duchesne and some of their, subsequent stars.
Possibly. And I just had one example, another one in my head that I just lost. But Jesus, this was just absolutely wild yesterday.
Yeah, it was
just
crazy.
So damn good. Oh, now I remember. This Florida team actually reminds me of the 2019. Was it 20? Yeah, the 2019 Columbus team. They kept they kept that core together, knowing it was going to be the last run. They went all in at the deadline. Got bounced in 5 in the second round. Florida.
You mean Calgary, right?
No, Columbus.
No, are you comparing Calgary to Columbus or Florida?
Oh, yes, Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, so Columbus, they keep their stars. They go all in at the deadline, get bounced in the second round. Florida, who finally, you could look at a team that's just, wow, this team might actually make a deep run this year for the first time in a long time. They make it out.
I think you can argue Calgary did that too, right?
And then Calgary shit the bed.
Calgary went out. Yeah, they did shit the bed. But again, they got bounced in 5, right? They went out. Look at all the trades that they made prior to the deadline last year. A lot of people forget they brought in Tyler Toffoli from the Montreal Canadiens. I think he was the most coveted right wing, available at the deadline. They went all in, and they damn well knew that there was a good chance that Johnny Gaudreau would not come back. I mean, of course, I don't think Brad Treliving foresaw Matthew Tkachuk saying, I'm not going to come back either. But, sometimes general managers are able to find the best out of a bad situation. And I think Joe Sakic did that in Colorado. I think that Lou Lamoriello did that in New York, right after John Tavares left for Toronto. made the Islanders a much better team, led them to 2 straight, Eastern Conference final appearances. And that is what I think is happening with Calgary and Brad Treliving. So, and I think it could happen with the Florida Panthers too. There are parallels that run between these two teams that are uncanny. So
yeah, the only minor differences between this Florida team and that year's Columbus team, Huberdeau was a year away from free agency, and Barkov had re-signed prior to this. Now,
right.
Columbus, they had Panarin and Bobrovsky, basically, and they knew both of them were gone.
Right. And not a lot of people are talking about this either, because I think it was a long time ago that this came out. But if you go back to before Barkov signed that extension, the word out of Florida was that they were looking to shed cap. They were looking to trade away and get as much cap space as possible. And, I think that goes into trading away Uyghur, and that goes to trading away Jonathan Huberdeau. I think they want flexibility, because first round picks are great. And, a top 4 right-handed defenseman in Mackenzie Weegar is great. And Jonathan Huberdeau's 115 points is great. But if you bring in Matthew Tkachuk, you have cap flexibility to address the needs that were holding you back the years previous. That's just as valuable in a flat cap era. So. And
Yeah.
Shades, you want to wrap it up by talking about the extension? Because it was a trade and sign, right? Or was it a sign and trade? I think it was going through.
Well, here's the thing. I look at it as a trade and sign because the extension came after the trade. That's just how I look at it.
And this tweet has just come out from David Dwork, and it goes along with our conversation. As the dust settles from the Panthers Flames blockbuster, I'm told Jonathan Huberdeau was not happy about how everything played out. There were some early informal extension talks, but Hubie's camp was waiting for an offer that never came. The next call from Bill Zito was the trade. So there you go. They did not want to lock in Jonathan Huberdeau for a high AAV contract. And you know what, Shades? I said it to you via text the other day, and I'll say it to you again. Would you rather have Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau for $17 million, or would you rather have Tkachuk for 9.8? And my answer is I'd rather have Tkachuk for 9.8, draft picks aside. So what do you think about that tweet that he's crazy?
This just happened to another player whose name is eluding me. Although
Andrew Kopp,
yes,
never got an offer from the Rangers.
That was a little shocking. But just to
it's a damn shame. Gonna miss Copper.
Same. Just to and put this quickly, 8 years times $9.5 million. I don't hate the contract. I actually kind of like it, especially if he does end up hitting that 80 to 85 point range. $9.5 million. That's market value for a point per game player. So I think the contract extension is a good one.
I do too, but I'm going to make a bold prediction right here, and I can't wait to look back at this, 7 years from now. I think by year 5 of this contract, it will be one of the worst contracts in the league. Okay. I think it will be up there with a contract that Florida regrets, but I think by year 5, Florida would have won a Stanley Cup, and that makes this contract worth it, in my opinion, because I bring you back to the 2016 free agent class. The following players signed during that class to all long-term extensions.
What a terrible free agent class that was.
Kyle Oposo signed, Milan Lucic, James Neal. They all signed. And don't they all kind of remind you of Matthew Tkachuk? Who's the last Matthew Tkachuk type player to come through the NHL? Milan Lucic. And they're regretting the contract. And ironically, he plays for Calgary. That's funny. But yeah, big bruising forwards like that, they don't tend to age well, Shades. And I don't think this contract is going to be any different. But I think that this move brings them closer to a cup.
And I could not have said it any better myself before the 40-minute Zoom limit time expired right there. And we had to start a new clip. But yeah, so that basically sums up the insanity that was yesterday and pretty much all the components to that trade from both teams. But speaking of another player, Pierre Luc Dubois has been in the news recently. for not the greatest reasons, but he basically said he wants out of Winnipeg, and he also basically flat out said that he wants to play for Montreal. So here's my take on this before I throw it to you. He is 24 years old, correct? Or 20 or 23?
I believe he is 24, yes.
He already wants off of his second NHL team. If I am a general manager, I am looking at that going, that is not a guy I want on my team, both in the short term and the long term, especially the long term. He comes across as a crybaby, to be brutally honest with you, because he didn't want to play for Tortorella because of basically they got into an argument. You're not getting any sympathy from me on that one, because coaches and players, they argue all the time. So
John Tortorella has been a coach for a long time, and there are a lot of players who have argued with him. So if they can handle it, you can handle it. That's my
and Tortorella also has a Stanley Cup to his name.
Yep.
So he wants out of Columbus, with that being the main reason. He gets traded to Winnipeg. Now all of a sudden, 2 years later, he wants out of Winnipeg because basically they didn't make the playoffs, and I mean, they're kind of in a tough situation going forward with the players they have locked up cap wise. He wants out again. He's coming across as a crybaby because his team didn't make the playoffs. This is just my opinion. This hasn't been reported as fact or anything, but that's just the way that I look at it. And he basically says, I only want to play for one team. What if that team doesn't want to sign him in a year from now? That team being the Montreal Canadiens. What the hell is he going to do? This is where I throw it to you.
What a shame, Pierre Luc Dubois, because he's really talented and he's one of the best young top six centers the game has to offer. And, you know, Shade, you bring up that rift between John Tortorella and Pierre Luc Dubois. I'm sure you remember it. Do you remember the shift in the bubble where he just exuded zero effort? It was not in the bubble, excuse me. It was in Columbus, but I believe it was during the COVID shortened season. He showed no effort. Like he was not even moving. Like he would go in as soft as you can possibly go into a corner, maybe try to tickle the puck. I guess that's the adjective I'll use, you know, and skate it gingerly back to the bench. That's when I knew. That's when I knew that Pierre Luc Dubois was somebody I did not want on my team. So I agree with you 1000%. If I'm general manager Kent Hughes of the Montreal Canadiens, yes, I need a center, but no, I want nothing to do with Pierre Luc Dubois one bit. And, you know, the fact that he, you know, there was a rift. Look, you know, in Winnipeg, Paul Maurice left the Winnipeg Jets last year out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And Paul Maurice at the time was one of the longer tenured coaches in the NHL. Why? Why is that? Paul Maurice didn't give any information as to why he left. And here's
I'm pretty sure he said that he felt like his message just wasn't getting across to the dressing room anymore.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm not going to speculate on that level, but here's what I will say. If Pierre Luc Dubois had a history with John Tortorella, he has an issue with authority. And if Paul Maurice left out of nowhere and he felt like the roster needed a new voice to take them to the next level, that in turn falls straight on Pierre Luc Dubois' shoulder. Because guess what? You were traded for Patrick Laine, a former number 2 overall pick from the Winnipeg Jets. There are expectations coming into this franchise. He did not meet them. And I think he was part of the reason why a very good coach in Paul Maurice was led right out of town unexpectedly. He signed a 1-year, $6 million contract with the Jets. You know, maybe it's a good situation because Rick Bowness comes in to be the new head coach and he's a kind of a no bullshit kind of guy. Maybe he can mold, you know, Pierre Luc Dubois into, you know, a character type player. But for right now, he's not that. And Shades, I don't know about you, but I was so frustrated early on in the offseason when every single Rangers forum was saying, let's trade for Dubois. Let's trade for Dubois. Let's trade for Dubois.
Which player was left out of that conversation? That's the real question.
Yeah, you're right. But I don't know.
Yeah, but Jarmo Kekalainen had a great quote when asked about how do you feel about trading away the 3rd overall pick, and he goes, well, we got the 2nd overall pick in the same draft, so I'm pretty happy.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, to this day, that's one of my favorite GM sound bites.
Right. And you know, it's funny, right? Because at the time, 2 years ago, when that line for Dubois swap was made, what was the mentality around the two players, right? Oh, Patrick Line, he doesn't give enough effort. He's just a goal scorer. He only plays on the offensive end. Well, guess what? He went to Columbus. He's flourishing right now. He just signed a 4-year extension worth $8.7 million per season. He turned it around. And now on the flip side, the guy that they traded for him, Pierre Luc Dubois, is having character issues on the other side. If I'm Montreal, I stay far, far away. And if I'm Winnipeg, I'm in a really tough situation, and I might be in between a rock and a hard place where the only two decisions they can make is letting Pierre Luc Dubois walk or having someone who's not good for your locker room on your team for the next multitude of seasons. And I think that's a lose-lose.
And I also want to point out the fact that when Laine was struggling under Tortorella, at least point producing wise, Tortorella was not throwing him under the bus. Tortorella was literally giving him props and saying, no, he's working towards being a better hockey player.
Right.
He did not give off that same vibe when talking about Dubois.
Right. It comes down to this. Dubois was not willing to make himself into a better hockey player. And, what kind of player does John Tortorella try to make his forwards, right? Defensively sound, making sure they get back on the back check, blocking shots every single opportunity that they can. And Patrick Laine, like you just alluded to, he transformed his game that way. Dubois never did, and there's no coach that's going to change that, at least up to this point. And if I'm a Winnipeg Jets fan, I'm crossing my fingers that Rick Bowness is that guy, but I just don't know. Because we don't really see that a lot. We don't really see a lot of, bad character players or players that don't give maximum effort. It does not come along in the NHL, especially ones that are as highly touted as Dubois. So it's a very unique situation for me.
Yeah, and what was I going to say? I had something else to say, but I'm going to bring up this point instead while I try and remember the other point. There's been talk about Scheifele being bad in the dressing room. That's questionable because that didn't really come out until like a year or two ago. Makes you wonder.
It does. And none of the locker room issues came out until Paul Maurice left. And who was one of the major roster changes before Paul Maurice left?
Pierre Luc Dubois
coming into that locker room. And you know what? Maybe Dubois, again, pure speculation, but maybe Pierre Luc Dubois came into the locker room after the trade and said, hey, everybody, I'm the #1 center. And Mark Scheifele said, wait a minute.
Yeah, you're going to have to earn that one.
Between those two, You never know. And if I'm the Winnipeg Jets, I value Mark Scheifele 1,000,000 times more than I do a player that doesn't want to be there. I mean, come on, he's under contract for 1 more year at $6 million cap hit, and he's coming out on the record in public saying, yeah, I want to play for the other province in Canada. Like, yeah, that's endearing yourself to the fan base and the organization. Yeah, sure.
And now I'm so glad you said that. I don't know if Zoom is going to pick that up, but I heard it. I'm so glad you said it.
I hope it did. I said jackass for everybody.
That's one of my favorite words, like all kidding aside, one of my favorite words. The other point that I just remembered that I wanted to bring up is especially I think it was Mike Rupp on NHL Network a few days ago. He said that, yes, Tortorella is a defensively minded coach, but it's not like he tries to take away offense like Barry Trotz does. That's the part I'm paraphrasing right there. Because Trotz is more heavily into, no, we're going to play like 90% defensive hockey and be opportunistic on offense, and we're going to be successful that way. Tortorella's like, no, we're going to be, when we're in the defensive zone, we're going to block like hell and defend like hell. But once we get the puck, we're moving the puck up and we're going to make plays when we're in the offensive zone.
Tortorella necessitates a commitment to defense while somebody like Trotz models his entire coaching style around the defensive side of the game. So extremely well said, Shades. And let me also say, Mike Rupp, he's great.
Oh, Mike Rupp is
He is
awesome.
outstanding. He might be, and this is no disrespect to Mike Rupp, he might be a better analyst than he was hockey player. like when he breaks stuff down like that, it's impressive. NHL Network has a really good group of characters.
You know, that's what I love about former players, like being on panels and stuff, because they can just word stuff and give a different perspective because they were there. Like they did that.
Right. And, I love hockey. You love hockey. We love talking about it, but we have never, and we most likely will never be inside an NHL locker room. So we're saying all this stuff about Scheifele and Dubois. There's not really a lot of foundation behind it. But when Rupper says it, or when Kevin Weeks goes out and says it, like you said, they've been in that situation before, and they know, kind of how attitudes tend to circulate.
Yeah, their word carries a much greater weight because they are legitimate former players in the show, to steal a baseball phrase. I don't know why I did that because I hate baseball, but you know what I'm trying to say.
No, I definitely do know what you're trying to say, and appreciate the baseball reference. There were some girls screaming outside my hotel room. That's why my mic was muted, so I couldn't really hear the analogy that you made, but I'll just go along with it for the purpose of the show.
You didn't miss much, but yeah, and I just want to bring up one last point on Tortorella. I mean, Cam Atkinson scored 30 goals under him. Oliver Bjorkstrand looked really good under him. Panarin was fantastic under him.
If you're willing to commit to the defensive side of the puck, you'll be just fine. Because he's not trying to do what Trotz does. What's one of the reasons why Barry Trotz got fired from the Islanders? It's because he was trying to change Matt Barzal's game. Matt Barzal is inherently an offensive dynamo who works around with the puck better than most other players in the league. And Barry Trotz tried to make him into a defensive center. That's not who Matt Barzal is. John Tortorella doesn't try to do that. He says, look, Panarin, for example, I understand you're a left winger. You got to do what you got to do. You got to have the puck on your stick. You're always trying to create space and look for that open pass. But that can't happen if you're going to be lackadaisical on defense. And whoop-de-doo, right? Panarin's not with John Tortorella anymore, and the commitment to defense was a problem in the playoffs with the Rangers and has been a problem the last few years. So maybe Tortorella gets a little bit more flack than he deserves. Maybe he does more good for his teams than he does bad. So that's something to bring up. And that's interesting saying because he's a Flyer now. So as Alain Vigneault said, be a fucking Flyer. See how that worked out for him.
That's a whole can of worms that I do not want to open up on this episode.
We got to have one 2-hour special on the Philadelphia Flyers. They deserve it.
Oh God, we talked enough about them last week. But yeah, that's all I got. Anything else you want to bring up?
No, that's all I got. And I think that's going to be really the last blockbuster trade we'll, see for quite a while. I do want to make a little bit of a bold take here on the Rangers. Last minute take on the Rangers. I don't think that Yaroslav Halak is going to be the backup goaltender for the Rangers.
I think it's going to be Domingue.
I think he'll be cut, released, whatever, bought out, sent to the minors, what have you. I think Louis Domingue is going to be the backup for the Rangers. I know it's random, but a lot of people are pinning Halak, to start a good 20, 25 games for the Rangers next year. He was garbage for the Canucks. He was garbage for the Bruins. And I think age is catching up to him. And I can't wait to see Louis Domingue in a Ranger jersey. Even if it's a random game against, the Flyers who stink. I can't wait to see that. It's going to be a shit time. Always has to fit in a Ranger point, right?
I do like that. We kind of do. I mean, we are Rangers fans after all.
That's right.
So, yeah, that's a pretty good way to end it. Thank you, everyone, for listening or watching. If you're watching on YouTube, do us all a favor, hit a like on the video, leave a comment if you want. Please try and keep it positive. We ain't trying to spread hate over here. Hit that subscribe button. Follow us on all of our social medias listed in the description below. And Liam, thank you again for saving my ass on yet another episode.
Shade's my pleasure. I'll come on anytime. And yeah, definitely. And for the comments that said my mic didn't sound good last time, I just want to say I was in my room and it was very hot and the fan was on above me. There is no fan this time. albeit there is no microphone because I am in a hotel. So hopefully the audio quality is a little bit better, but that's all I got, Shades.
Yeah, blockbuster and a half that trade was yesterday, and we might not record for a little while, but I know exactly when we're going to record, and that's when Nazem Kadri finally signs.
That's right. I hope he signs with the Islanders. As a Ranger fan, I hope that happens because that's a contract that's going to blow up in their face. But again, another story for another time.
Not gonna lie, that'd be pretty funny if it did blow up in their faces, especially now that Lou's gone. That would be even funnier.
Yeah,
But yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.